Welcome back to Fixing Furniture. I make these videos because I believe furniture repair skills are a disappearing craft. Today my project is working on this chair that has a broken spindle. Now this is challenging because the spindle is curved. So I'm going to walk you through step by step how I go through and repair this chair and get the finish to match so this chair is back in working order. Stick with me, I'll show you how it's done.
As a furniture repair business, we're opening the doors to our workshop to show you the tools and techniques to repair furniture.
The front rail here, you can see this has been broken off.
We give you tips to make your repair projects easier. Let's get into the workshop and start fixing furniture.
Sponsored by Kennedy Hardware, offering restoration hardware for antique furniture. The first thing I noticed about this chair is the back is a little bit loose. Now that would mean that the wedges are loose, but when I look underneath here, there aren't wedges. So we've got a bit of a problem because someone's tried to repair this before. I'll flip it over, we'll take a look. On the bottom of a furniture, you can sometimes find history. This isn't a terribly old chair, but here I can see Louisville or Louisville. This is Quebec, that's a Quebec postal code. And over here, yep, there's some French writing. So 30th of August 1995. So this chair was produced just before the collapse of the furniture industry in North America. That happened in the 90s. I can see here someone's used construction adhesive to glue this. There are screws in holding these legs, and that should not be done because that actually creates more damage to the chair. So here where we've got the back, you can see one screw in there. Someone's added yet another screw here. This is a wedge tenon, so that should not be screwed. Let's take a look at the other side here. Yeah, this is the same. So you can see that screw put in there actually split the wood. It damaged it, which isn't good. Someone's added another screw here. So, I don't know. We'll take the screws out and see what happens. Let me explain why you should never put screws in the bottom of a chair. Chairs have live loads on them. We sit on them, we shift around, so there's a little bit of wood movement that happens in the chair legs meeting the seat. As soon as you introduce metal into that, the metal is stronger than the wood, which means it starts to wear out the wood. It also, in some cases, is severing wood fibers, which is weakening the joint. So while it seems to hold things together, it allows the chair to wear, and chairs should be reglued probably every 20, 30, maybe 40 years, depending on how often they're used. We take them apart, reglue them, and put them back together. They're a serviceable piece of furniture. In this particular case, we might have some permanent damage, which could render this a piece of garbage. Let's take out the screws and find out. Now don't be tempted to use an impact driver when trying to take these screws out. The jarring motion could break the screws, so it's best to use a screwdriver and back them out slowly by hand. So this is what the back of a chair should look like. There's a line right here. This is a wedge that goes in here. And what it does is it forces the wood this way, and it holds that back from wanting to pull out. So what I need to do is drill out that wedge to release the tension here, and then that should slide out. So I've got the wedge drilled out here, and what I should be seeing is a bit of movement, but this is moving, this isn't. I'm wondering, uh-oh, this is actually broken off. It's two separate pieces. So I'll see if I can knock that out. We've got a big problem here. Well, it's kind of hard to tell what caused this damage, but I can tell on the end here, you see how the wood is darker there and there? Someone tried to glue this old post underneath to this, and then they put a screw through. So we've got a big problem here because end grain to end grain doesn't glue well, which means we don't have a post here. I'm not sure if this side is still intact, but let's see if I can take it out. This piece fell on the floor here, which means we've got a broken joint, and this should be coming off, but for some reason down here, these parts aren't letting go. So down here, there's a brad nail there, and there, and there. Again, nails shouldn't be in chairs. This is pretty messed up. I'll see if I can pull those apart so we can take the back off. I'll turn this right side up, and we'll see what we can do. Now that I can see it up close, these are the 3 brad nails that I was looking at, but I can see there's a hole here. There's another hole here. So there's a few more brad nails here. Unfortunately, there's no easy way to disconnect these. I'm going to see if I can tap them out, but I might end up splitting some wood. With the hoop of the back removed, you can see the dominant shape of the chair. This is referred to as a wheat-shaped chair. This looks like wheat that's been bound together, and then the wheat leans out. So that's the dominant shape we've got here. Now, because of the damage I've discovered on this hoop, this has become a significantly more detailed and expensive repair. So I need to reach out to the customer, give them the price for it, and see if they want to move ahead, and we'll decide what's due next. I just finished talking to the customer about repairing this chair, and it turns out this chair fell off the back of a moving truck. So it was a severe break. A family member repaired it, but obviously not well enough. This is a very challenging repair. You might think that, hey, just drill a hole there, put a dowel in. That's not the right way to repair something like this. I've seen a number of failures, and I've actually created a video that describes in detail why you should not be doing that. I'll leave a link in the video description. So the approach that I'm using here is I'm using what's called a scarf joint. I'm cutting a severe angle here, mending on a new piece of wood, so I've got a great strong gluing surface, and then I'll have to reshape this end so it fits in the chair, cut a slot in it, and then put the wedge in to hold it together. So this has almost tripled the cost of this project from what I had originally estimated for the customer. But once I get this glued up, what I'll do is start working on steam bending this particular piece here, and you can see the process I use for that. Before I cut the back, I need to make sure I know the exact length. So first thing I'm going to do here is take a photo of the end. That way I know what this looks like. But now what I'm going to do is trace this and determine the length of the material that I need. So I'm just going to trace this around on a piece of moving paper so I can line this up again. Then what I'm going to do is put a piece of tape on here, and I just want to make a line here so I know that these parts are perfectly lined up. I'll do the same thing on this side. Put a line here, and that way I can take this off, I can bring it back, I can line up these lines, and I know it's in the exact same position. So the next step then is to figure out how long these need to be. Now they can be longer, but I just need to estimate the material. It looks like that broke off about there, so I'm going to use that as my estimation for length on how long these parts need to be. I can always make this longer, put it in the chair, and then cut it off afterwards. So now what I need to do is figure out a way to cut a steep angle on the back here. And I'm going to cut off this part and put the angle here. That way when there's pressure of this going out, this is going to help hold it together. So cut it off on this side, cut it off on this side, and we can get some new pieces glued on. Okay, the wood pile here, what I'm looking for is red oak. So I've got a piece here, but grain patterns can vary a lot. So I'm going to grab a few pieces, and what we'll do is look at them and see how they relate to the chair and which one's going to work best for us. So let's take a look at these. You can tell just from a distance how different they are. Let's take a look at the first board here. So we've got fairly open pores here relative to this. Let's look at the second side. So here they're fairly open. So let's see if we've got tight pores on the second side. No, we don't. So this isn't going to work for us because when we patch this in, you're going to see a stark difference between the grain pattern. Let's grab the next one here. So this one, you can see there's sort of a ray fleck in here. This is a property of red oak. White oak, it's even more dominant. And here, this pattern is way off. Now, if we look at the end grain, it'll tell us the story. So the end grain here, the grain's running this way. So when you look at it this way, you get the ray fleck. This is called quarter sawn oak. And when you look at it this way, the grain pattern is much, much different. So this won't work for us either. What we're looking for is something where we've got the grain on a 45-degree angle. So not here, but over here. So let's match that up and see how it looks. So fairly close grain pattern here. That's good. And here, yeah, it's not too bad either. So I think we'll go with that one. That's the closest match we've got so far. Let's see if there are any more here. This one, no, that's not going to work. This one, it's the same as the other one, so that's not going to work. So this is the best board right here at this end. I'll cut off 2 small pieces, mill it to the right size, and then cut the angles. Okay, I've got my clamping set up here and you'll see how this works. The challenge with gluing these is when you put glue on them and you squeeze them, you clamp them, they want to slide this way. So I need to put some tension on the end, which is why I've got that board on the top. So I'll get the glue spread on these pieces here, and I'll show you how I clamp it up. Okay, so I'll put the first clamp on here. And what I want to do is line it up so there's just barely any overlap on the outside edge. So I've just got a little bit proud this way. Do the same thing on this side. Okay. Now this clamp is going on here. And this clamp is going on here. Now, as I tighten these, it's putting tension on the board, putting tension on the joints. Still good there, still good there. Now we can tighten these down. I'll add a few more clamps so we've got good clamping pressure, and then I can wipe off the glue. The back hoop's now glued up, and it needs to sit for 24 hours so that glue comes to full strength before I put any stress on it. The next step is for me to go through and create a form so I can do steam bending. So what I'll do is put this MDF back here, and I'm going to trace this part here, which is a duplicate of that. So what I'm going to do is just use my marker here. This part up here is straight up and down until I get to here, and then it starts to bend. So I'm just going to move it over a little bit because I need to overbend this. What happens with steam bending is there's something called spring back. So it's going to want to straighten out a little bit more than how I bend it. So that gives me the curve that I'm looking for. I'll extend this just a little bit further, cut this out, and then we've got a form. I've now got the bending form ready, and it's got spots here for clamping. And you can see here I've got a 1/2-inch dowel. It doesn't take much strength to actually bend it over. But what we're going to do is heat it up, bring it over here, clamp it, let it cool, and it will stay there. The key to having success at this is making sure that the grain is perfectly straight in the dowel. If it's not straight, it will break. So I sorted through about 25 dowels to get 4 that have straight grain in them. And I took some footage in the hardware store. Let me show you how to choose the straight grain. On the right side here, you can see that there are what we call cathedrals. This pattern is the grain running out on the side. And what that means is that the grain isn't running straight and parallel with the piece, it's running on an angle. We want the ones that are perfectly straight because those ones will bend without breaking. The first thing we need for steam bending is something to generate the steam. So you can use a kettle. I've used a wallpaper steamer here because of all the components fit neatly together. I've got a trough here that supports the steam box, and this is my steam box. So it nests in here, and it has dowels that run through it, and that suspends the wood so that the wood is in the middle of the chamber. I've got a door here on the end, and this is where the wood comes in. And there's a number of different principles to understand about wood bending. The temperature in here needs to be 200 degrees, so it takes some time to build up the steam. It's not a pressure cooker, so there are vent holes in this where the steam will come out, and that allows the steam to circulate. So it comes in here, and it will come out the ends, so it's constantly moving. This is also on a slope, so I've got a drain hole here because there's lots of water here that's going to be used. This cup goes on the end there, and that will catch all the water. So I need space on the workbench here to be able to do the bending. I'm going to wait to do this, let the glue dry overnight, and then in the morning we'll fire up the steam box. We'll get this put together here, and in the morning we'll start it up. The glue's now dried overnight, so I'll take the clamps off here. We'll take a look at what we've got. So it's looking good on this side here. Yeah, looking good. So the excess material I have is on the inside here. Once we get the steam box going, I'll trim the insides of those. We'll plane it down so that they're nice and flush, and then we can work on making sure we've got tenons that are going to fit in the seat. There are a few principles to be aware of when steam bending. The first is the steam box has to be at 200 degrees before you put the wood in. That's a lot of heat. So you need to make sure you've got a steam chamber and a steam generator that work together so you've got that right combination. The second thing is the steam is invisible and can severely burn you. So you need to work with it safely. I'm not going to teach you the safety aspects of all this. If you want to learn more about wood bending, I recommend this book, Complete Manual of Wood Bending. I'll leave a link in the video description so you can have access to that. So what I'm going to do is turn on the steam generator, get the box warmed up, and then we'll take some temperature readings and make sure that it's at that 200 degrees before we put the wood in. Okay, it's time to pull it out. I'll open this up. I want to move pretty quickly to get this into the form. So in the form, first clamp, second clamp, and then third clamp. Okay, now I need to let that cool. I can now line this back up in my original drawing here with these lines here and here. And then these pieces here will tell me where the shoulder should be. So if we take a close look, you can see the cut line is here. And what I want to do is line that up parallel to that, about the width of the saw blade. And then that will tell me how I need to shape this on the new part. So right here is where I need to transition to a round. And then right here is where I can start cutting to get to that round shoulder. I think this is cooled enough in the form that we can take it out and see what it looks like. So take the first clamp off here, and the second clamp, and see how it's springing back a little bit. And the third clamp. Okay, that's definitely curved. Let's see how it matches up with the chair. I'll put the chair on the bench and we can see how it lines up with this part here. So we'll line it up here at the bottom, and that's looking pretty good. It's off just a little bit. I'll need to flex it, I think, to get it in that hole. But just a bit of sanding because the raised grain will be good. And then when the back's ready, we can test fit it. I'm happy with how this turned out. If you're interested in steam bending, I'll leave a link to the steam generator in the video description. And if you'd like to use the steam box I've got here, let me know. If there's enough interest in it, I'll create plans and put those in the video description as well. The next thing I'm going to do is work on fitting the back here. So I needed to bring out my benchtop shave horse, clear off space here, and then we'll get to that. This is a benchtop shave horse I made for a compact shop. These typically take up 5 feet or more in a workshop. So what this allows me to do is clamp it with foot pressure, and then I use my draw knife here. So what I'm going to do is knock off the corners and then work this into a round. And then once I get close, I'll fine tune it with the spoke shave. So the advantage of using a shave horse is I've got both my hands free, so I can use the tool, and the clamping pressure is provided by my foot. I want these to be slightly oversized, so I'll just see what they fit like here. Okay, and they are oversized. So I'll progressively work my way down until I get a nice fit here. I'm getting closer here. I just need to mark the high points, shave it down a little bit more. Okay, so I'm getting close to a fit there. What I'm going to do now is use the spoke shave, work it down here, get it up to the mark so it's seated where it should be, and then we should be able to fit all the parts. Okay, now what I need to do is start working it down and getting these put in so we can figure out how far down it needs to be seated into the seat. So here we've got some room, not fully seated. If we look up here, you can see that we've got a bit of space. So that's almost half an inch there that this needs to come down on the posts. I don't want to take it off of the front because I think that can come down. I need to mark it at the back here, shave that down, and then we should have a nice tight fit. I measured the top and it's 3/8. So right here is where I need to seat this. So back here is where I need to do the work. The most effective way to get a line around this, so I've got a good marking point to work to, is just use a scrap piece of lumber that's the right thickness, and there you've got a reference line. I'm getting closer, but I'm not quite there yet. So what I do is put this in as far as I can, just sort of twist it a little bit, and that gives me some wear marks on here to see where it's binding and where I need to trim. So we're now seated well here, and if we look up at the top here, we've got these seated well, but you see then it starts to open up here. So what it's telling me is the right post needs to be seated down a little bit further into the seat. Close, but not quite there. Okay, I've learned as I've taken this on and off that if I put the right side in first over here, it's easier to put it together. So get these ones all lined up here. Move over here. I missed one. There. Okay. So this is all put together now. Now you have some appreciation why this costs so much more to repair this part of the chair than my original estimate. So this part here, I now have to get marked to length, fit it in here, and then we can glue the back of the chair together. I've now got this fit here, here, and up at the top, and it's looking pretty good. There is one problem I need to address before I glue this together, and that's down here. You can see there's just a slight bit of gap in that joint. So I think it was just the saw kicked off a little bit on an angle. So I want to fill that with epoxy adhesive to make sure that this joint is as strong as possible and that it's not going to come apart. So I'll mask that off, put some epoxy in there, let it dry, and then what we'll do is split the tenons, cut them underneath so we can put wedges in. So I'm just sanding where I put the epoxy here. I'll sand off the rest of these parts here, prepare them for the finish, and then we'll get to installing the back. Before I assemble this in the chair, I'll just let you take a close look at what a scarf joint is. It's right across there.
So you can see when I sanded off the bare wood here and here, how well that matches. The grain pattern's pretty good there. Turn it on this side. You can see it there as well. We look at it on the back side. So once I put a finish on this, it'll be very difficult to tell on this side that it was ever repaired. On this side, the grain patterns are matching pretty well. The grains cut across there. On the inside here, there's just a little bit of a void. Might have to touch that up in the end. And here, you can see we've got a nice grain match. So it really does pay to make sure you're choosing the right wood when you're doing a wood repair so you get this. I'll put a clear coat on this once the chair is put together, and that will virtually disappear. We can now move on to some chair making magic. So these tenons here need to be split. So that means a cut in them, and a wedge goes in to hold them in place. Now, if I were to put the wedge in this direction, it would want to split the chair along the grain. So it happens perpendicular to the grain. So I'm going to mark it on either side here. Then I'll put this in the vise and we'll cut the slot. I'm going to use a Western style saw because the blade is thicker. It'll give me a wider cut than if I were to use a Japanese style saw. All I do is line up my saw on the center of that line and then start cutting. So I want to cut about 3/4 of the way down here to allow for that wood to expand with the wedge. So here's a close-up look at the wedged tenon. So the key is having a wedge. It goes in the slot here, and as that gets pushed in there, the tenon widens out. So this happens at the bottom of the chair. At the top of the chair, it doesn't change, but because the tenon at the bottom of the chair is wider, the post won't pull out. The key to this is having a good wedge. This is a perfect chair back wedge. We sell this on our website, wouldn'titbenice.ca. I'm all ready for the glue up here. I'm using hide glue to put this together. I'm going to be putting glue on both the mortises and the tenons just to make sure I've got good glue coverage and everything will hold together well. I want to clamp this right in the center to get it as tight to the chair as possible. And then what we can do is set the wedges in. I'll put glue on one side of the wedge here, and that way in the future, if it needs to come out, it makes it easier on the Craftsman. And then as I drive it in, what I want to do is hold the post and lift up the chair a little bit. So I want to put the pressure on the post, not the seat. And you can hear that sound change to a higher pitch. Then we've got a nice solid joint. The last step is to use a flush cut saw to trim off the wedge, and we're good to go. Now I can clean out the glue squeeze out, and then we can apply the finish. I know what I need to put on here because I've got test samples that I refer to on a regular basis. If you're interested in learning about how to do stain matching, it is challenging. And in our Fixing Furniture community, we've done 3 live sessions to cover off on that topic. They're pre-recorded, so if you join our Fixing Furniture community, go to fixingfurniture.com, you can watch those recorded sessions and learn all about how to match stains. The first step I'm using is to wipe on some boiled linseed oil. And once that is dry, I'll follow up with polyurethane.
This once broken chair back is now rock solid and ready to go back to the customer. For our next upcoming video, it's getting colder outside and we're looking at doing a festive video. And that's with this, a sled restoration. Have you ever seen one of these? Have you ever ridden one of these? I've got a fun video I'm going to share with you when I publish this video. So stay tuned. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe and turn on the bell notifications to get notified every time we publish a video. I'm going to leave another video for you right here for you to enjoy. Thank you for watching Fixing Furniture.